tend to copy the young.
You're just figuring out. You have like hundreds of different pairs, you know, every shape, color, with velvet, with, I don't know, suede, everything, mixed colors, crazy. So
well, all my other clothing I have on is quite old, so that's the newest. You're right. That's the only new thing I have are my
so
shoes.
So you definitely really.
I have shiny shoes. Yeah, shiny shoes.
That's the trendy part. Okay. Everything in position. How does that feel?
Well, I'm really happy because I always felt aesthetically very close to Europe. I always felt, I mean, not only was I always, I felt always comfortable and inspired by the people, but the architecture and the coffee, the art, and it's, I mean, I wasn't in Berlin 5 hours before I had seen art that I hadn't seen. I saw the Cy Twombly exhibit. I went to a very kind collector's house at Dr. Mark's, and he showed us all his paintings, his Picassos and Warhols, and a beautiful Bruegel, one of the earliest Bruegels, a very pastoral scene with sheep and the Savior and a Turner type of light. So I was immediately happy. I said, well, I'm back in Europe. And I haven't been to Europe since 1979, so I'm probably happier than you know.
That's exciting. And then the kind of like event taking place here, you know, was that, what kind of challenge was that for you, attending the Peace University here?
Well, actually, it was more of an emotional challenge than an intellectual challenge, because emotionally, to be part of a panel and part of a dialogue with His Holiness was so moving and such a dream come true for me that I actually was in tears sitting there a lot through it. It really made me weep happy tears. But I also thought, as I was sitting there, I wondered, you know, if I was qualified to be part of their gathering. And then, as I listened to each person speak, it occurred to me that what they're attempting to do is to build a global dialogue, and it's still in its infancy stages, and everyone is still awkward and still trying to figure out how to speak to each other. There was these tremendous learned people and politicians and the Dalai Lama and all of these journalists, and they were asked, the journalists could have asked anything they wanted. They were given the opportunity, and hardly anyone asked anything. They just sat there. And I realized that still everyone is self-conscious and a little nervous and not knowing what to say to each other. And so I realized that we all have, we're all qualified, and we all have a responsibility to try to help this thing happen. And whatever we can do, whether it's sing a song or recite a poem or elevate people's consciousnesses concerning political strife, or to try to open another's heart it's it's important that we're all involved and we all do our part. So if I could do anything, I'll try. I
mean, you not only that you have played a very influential role in music business, you have always been an artist. So I think this event kind of like brings this, I don't know, this spirituality together of both aspects that really mean a lot to you, doesn't it?
Well, I can't claim to be politically articulate because I'm really not, but I have spent a lot of my life trying to explore and articulate this the spiritual aspect of humankind, and I think that as I perceive what they're trying to do with the Peace University, it has to be a melding of both political and spiritual awareness. Can't be just one or the other. They have to come together. So I think I can find a place in there somewhere.
Most definitely. Let me ask you something about your contribution in terms of like sharing your poetry with people there. I mean, poetry, writing poems, has always played a very important role in your life. What are you going to share with people tonight?
Well, I think that I have two responsibilities tonight. One is hopefully to say something that will be meaningful in terms of the event. I have written a poem to pay homage to His Holiness, and I'd like to read that. I would like Lenny Kay and I will be joining the Rainbirds to do at least one song, which is the musical version of the poem that I read at the forum, People of the Power. And my husband, actually, that was my husband's line, People of the Power. He came up to me one day. I was in the kitchen cooking, and he looked at me and he said, People of the Power, write it. And I said, okay. So we talked about, what his philosophy was in terms of those simple words, and we wrote the song together. And that would have been, that when I sing that song, since my husband has departed, it gives me an opportunity to share with people his dream for them, which my husband had a very global outlook and hopes for a more global network. And that song is emergence of my idea. I really looked more for a spiritual network, and he was more interested in a political network, and so it merges the two. So I think it's a nice little theme song for the night. And then I think my other role is that I am there, hopefully, to help people have fun, to have a good time, and I would like to, I hope that our performance will also be uplifting to people, because speeches and talking, all of these things, there'll be many people speaking, and hopefully everyone will learn from that. But I think people also need, to, feel good and to feel uplifted, and there's a lot of different ways that you can help raise a person's consciousness. You can raise a person's consciousness by showing them, all of the terrible things that are happening, footage of people being slaughtered, people dying, people hungry, people starving, and it's important for people to see and understand these things are happening and to raise their awareness. But I also think it's also important to make people feel good about themselves, we can't continually remind our fellow man that of all his faults and all of his failings. We also, I think, have to remind our fellow man that he has the right to dream, a right to feel joy, that he is valuable, that each person is worthy to be loved and to be cared for. So those are the things I'll be thinking of.
Do you think that, or do you have an idea what the fact that so many different people from so many different backgrounds that normally are completely fragmented and disconnected come together in this place, what kind of effect that can possibly have? What are your hopes for that?
One is that they all experience some joy, because in being with each other.
Can you start with my hope is?
My hope is that that everyone is able to experience some joy. I experienced great joy being at the press conference to hear the thoughts, even the complaints, the frustrations, and the hopes and dreams of all of the panelists, and looking out at the people and their expectations and their hopes and dreams. And I've forgotten the question.
And what your hope is, that an event like this has a really big potential.
Well, it's the idea is that that the future, which is something even when I had a rock and roll band, I was hoping for, is a global network. When I was younger, my band, one of the things we were hoping for then was to open communication, global communication through rock and roll, through music, which I still have great belief in. And, in that way, what the people at the peace conference people are really trying to do the same thing. They're trying to create a global network that's doesn't have so much self-interest. Each faction. Of course, that's very difficult. Even yesterday, I could see that each person speaks for their country and hopes for something particular to their country, except the Dalai Lama, who has the most at stake in that way, because his country's been taken from him. He asked for nothing for his country yesterday. He asks for all of mankind. He asks for all of mankind to love and care for each other, to be compassionate toward each other, because in that sense, if everyone was good to each other, we wouldn't have to be so self-interested. And I think actually he's way ahead of the rest of them. And my hope is that all of these different political factions and all of these people from various countries and various political situations will learn from him, because his simplicity, it's always the simplest thing is always the answer. People get so wrapped up in all of their red tape and their political issues, and really the only way our planet is going to survive is from very simple thing, just like Jesus said, love one another. If we were all cared for our fellow man, that's all we'd need. If we all offered our hand, gave someone a helping hand, like Mother Teresa says, help each person according to their need. We'd be a lot better off, wouldn't we?
Thanks a lot. That was more than we could hope for.
Oh, thank
Excellent.
you.
No, it really was.
Thank you for talking with me.
I think that must be really touching for you to see. I mean, what you just mentioned, talking to the Dalai Lama in person. And
You can say it again.
What?
Those lines. Just 2 or 3 out of it, so I haven't cut to the...
Let's see.
Sorry.
Where there were deserts, I saw fountains, and like cream, the waters rise, and we strolled there together, with none to laugh nor criticize, and the leopard and the lamb lay together, truly bound. I was hoping, in my hoping, to recall what I had found. I was dreaming, in my dreaming, God knows, a pure view. And as I wake up from my sleeping, I repeat my dream to you, that the people have the power. The people have the power.
Professor Galt, yes?